Have you ever wondered why the most spiritually evolved people you know seem to prefer the quiet sanctuary of their homes over the bustling chaos of social gatherings? Why do those who have touched the deepest truths of existence often choose solitude over society? Today we're diving deep into the profound wisdom of Dr. Brian Weiss and exploring a phenomenon that touches the lives of countless awakened souls around the world. Dr. Brian Weiss, the renowned psychiatrist who revolutionized our understanding of past life regression and soul healing, has observed something fascinating throughout his decades of work with spiritually awakened individuals. Those who have experienced the deepest levels of spiritual awakening often find themselves naturally gravitating toward the sacred space of their homes, not out of fear or antisocial tendencies, but from a profound understanding of energy, consciousness, and the true nature of spiritual growth. If you've been feeling this pull towards solitude, if you've noticed that crowded places and superficial interactions drain your energy more than they used to, then this message is specifically meant for you. Stay with me until the end, because we're going to uncover not just why this happens, but how it's actually a sign of your spiritual evolution, not something to feel guilty about. If you resonate with this spiritual journey, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Leave a comment saying I'm ready to evolve spiritually, and join our community of awakened souls who understand that true growth often happens in the quiet moments of introspection. When Brian Weiss first began his work in past life regression therapy in the 1980s, he was a traditional psychiatrist working within the conventional medical framework. His encounter with Catherine, a patient whose breakthrough came through accessing past life memories, completely transformed his understanding of consciousness, healing, and human spiritual evolution. Through thousands of sessions over the decades, Dr. Weiss began to notice consistent patterns among those who experienced profound spiritual awakenings. One of the most significant observations was how these individuals began to naturally withdraw from certain social situations and environments. This wasn't withdrawal born from depression, anxiety, or social dysfunction. Instead, it represented a fundamental shift in how awakened individuals process and interact with energy, both their own and that of others around them. From Weiss's perspective, influenced by the timeless wisdom that Dolores Cannon also championed, spiritual awakening brings with it an increased sensitivity to energy fields, emotional atmospheres, and the collective consciousness of groups. When someone undergoes deep spiritual transformation, whether through past life regression, meditation, or spontaneous awakening experiences, their energetic frequency begins to shift. They become more attuned to subtle vibrations that most people aren't even aware exist. This heightened sensitivity creates a natural preference for environments where they can maintain their energetic equilibrium. Home becomes not just a physical space, but a sacred sanctuary where they can process their spiritual insights, integrate their experiences, and maintain the delicate balance of their expanding consciousness. The wisdom traditions have long recognized that spiritual growth often requires periods of withdrawal and introspection. The hermit archetype appears across cultures precisely because deep spiritual work cannot happen amid constant external stimulation and social demands. Think about this for a moment. When was the last time you felt truly energized after spending time in a crowded mall, a loud restaurant, or a social gathering where conversations remained surface level? For spiritually awakened individuals, these experiences often feel draining because they're absorbing and processing far more than just the obvious social interactions. They're picking up on the collective emotional field, the unspoken tensions, the spiritual hunger and confusion of others around them. Brian Weiss discovered through his therapeutic work that highly sensitive spiritual individuals often unconsciously take on the emotional and energetic burdens of others. This isn't necessarily a conscious choice, but rather a natural byproduct of having an open, compassionate heart and an awakened consciousness that recognizes the interconnectedness of all beings. Many spiritually evolved people find themselves in the role of unconscious healers or energy transmuters. They walk into a room and automatically begin absorbing and transforming the heavy energies present, often leaving them feeling depleted and overwhelmed. Over time, they learn that staying home more often isn't antisocial behavior, but rather intelligent spiritual self-care. Share in the comments an experience where you felt the presence of spiritual mentors or noticed a significant inner transformation. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Dr. Weiss has observed that spiritual awakening typically unfolds in distinct phases, and each phase brings its own relationship to social interaction and environmental preferences. In the initial awakening phase, individuals often experience a burst of enthusiasm and want to share their newfound insights with everyone around them. They may become evangelical about their spiritual discoveries, feeling compelled to wake others up or convince them of deeper truths. However, as the awakening process matures, a different phase emerges. The individual begins to understand that spiritual growth is deeply personal and cannot be forced upon others. They realize that their role is not to convert or convince, but simply to embody their truth and allow their light to shine naturally. This realization often coincides with a natural drawing inward, a desire to spend more time in contemplation, study, and inner work. The intermediate phase of spiritual evolution brings what many describe as a spiritual homesickness. Awakened individuals begin to feel like strangers in a world that seems increasingly concerned with material pursuits, surface-level entertainment, and ego-driven achievements. They find that conversations about celebrities, gossip, or material acquisitions feel empty and unfulfilling. Instead, they crave discussions about consciousness, purpose, healing, and the deeper mysteries of existence. This isn't spiritual superiority or judgment of others. Rather, it's a natural consequence of having touched something profound and real, something that makes the illusions of the material world feel transparent and ultimately unsatisfying. Just as someone who has tasted gourmet cuisine might find fast food less appealing, those who have experienced spiritual nourishment often find superficial interactions spiritually malnourishing. The advanced phases of spiritual awakening bring an even deeper understanding of energy dynamics and the importance of conscious choice about where and how to spend one's time and attention. These individuals have learned to recognize the difference between isolation, born from fear, and solitude, chosen from wisdom. Brian Weiss emphasizes that spiritually awakened people don't stay home because they're antisocial or afraid of the world. They stay home because they've learned to distinguish between activities that genuinely nourish their souls and those that merely distract or drain them. They've developed what we might call spiritual discernment about how to use their precious life energy. If this message is touching your soul, leave a like so that more consciousness can awaken to this light. Your engagement helps spread this wisdom to others who need to hear it. The process of spiritual awakening invariably brings increased empathic abilities and psychic sensitivity. Dr. Weiss has documented countless cases where individuals, after experiencing past life regression or deep spiritual healing, find themselves suddenly able to sense others' emotions, physical pain, or even thoughts. While this can be a beautiful gift, it can also be overwhelming, especially in crowded or emotionally charged environments. Many awakened individuals describe walking into a hospital, shopping mall, or even a family gathering, and immediately feeling bombarded by the collective emotional field of everyone present. They might suddenly feel anxious when they were peaceful moments before, or experience physical symptoms that aren't their own. This psychic absorption happens because spiritual awakening often dissolves the rigid ego boundaries that normally protect us from others' energetic fields. Learning to manage this sensitivity becomes a crucial part of the spiritual journey. Some individuals develop sophisticated techniques for energetic protection and cleansing. Others find that the simplest and most effective approach is to carefully choose their environments and limit exposure to overwhelming energetic situations. Home becomes a place of energetic reset, where they can clear away the accumulated psychic debris from interactions with others and return to their own authentic, energetic signature. This isn't selfishness, it's spiritual hygiene, as necessary for their well-being as physical cleanliness is for bodily health. Dr. Weiss often speaks about the importance of honoring these needs, rather than forcing oneself to conform to social expectations that no longer serve spiritual growth. He emphasizes that what appears to be withdrawal from the world is actually a deeper engagement with reality, a choice to focus on quality over quantity in all interactions and experiences. The awakened individual learns to ask themselves important questions before accepting social invitations or venturing into crowded spaces. Will this interaction contribute to my spiritual growth? Will I be able to maintain my authentic self in this environment? Am I going because I genuinely want to, or because I feel obligated by social conditioning? Through his therapeutic work, Brian Weiss has identified several key characteristics that explain why spiritually awake people prefer the sanctuary of home. First, they've developed what he calls energetic sovereignty. This means they've learned to recognize their own authentic energy signature and protect it from being overwhelmed or contaminated by lower vibrational influences. Second, they've usually discovered that their most profound spiritual insights and healing experiences happen in quiet, contemplative states rather than amid external stimulation. Home provides the ideal environment for meditation, prayer, spiritual study, and the kind of deep inner work that facilitates continued spiritual evolution. Third, many awakened individuals have realized that they serve the world better by maintaining their own high vibrational state, rather than dissipating their energy in environments that pull them into lower consciousness patterns. They understand that their peace, love, and spiritual clarity can radiate outward and positively influence the collective consciousness, even from the privacy of their own homes. This doesn't mean they become hermits or avoid all social contact. Rather, they become highly selective about their interactions, choosing to engage with people and situations that support mutual growth and authentic connection. They might have a few deeply meaningful friendships rather than many superficial acquaintances. They might prefer small, intimate gatherings focused on meaningful conversation over large parties centered around entertainment and distraction. Write in the comments, "Today I release old patterns and embrace the light of spiritual renewal." Your declaration might inspire others to do the same. Dr. Weiss has observed that spiritually awakened individuals often go through what he describes as a social detox period. This is a time when they naturally pull back from many previous social connections and activities as they integrate their new understanding of themselves and their purpose. This period can be confusing and sometimes painful, as friends and family members may not understand the changes taking place. During this social detox phase, the individual is essentially recalibrating their entire approach to relationships and social interaction. They're learning to distinguish between connections based on genuine soul recognition and those based on habit, convenience, or social conditioning. They're discovering which activities genuinely nourish their spirit and which merely provide temporary distraction from inner emptiness. This process often involves what feels like grief, as they release attachments to people, places, and activities that no longer align with their authentic self. However, Weiss emphasizes that this grief is actually a form of spiritual labor, necessary for birthing their more evolved self into the world. Many people going through this process worry that they're becoming antisocial or that something is wrong with them. Weiss reassures his clients that this is actually a sign of healthy spiritual development. The caterpillar doesn't maintain its old social circle when it's transforming into a butterfly. Similarly, humans undergoing spiritual metamorphosis naturally gravitate toward environments and relationships that support their emerging self. The key insight that Weiss shares is that this preference for home and solitude isn't permanent isolation, but rather a necessary incubation period. Just as seeds need the dark, quiet earth to germinate, spiritual growth often requires periods of withdrawal from external stimulation to allow new insights and abilities to develop fully. During this time, many individuals discover talents and interests they never knew they had. They might begin writing, painting, gardening, or developing psychic abilities. They often report feeling more creative and inspired when they're alone than they ever did in social situations. Home becomes not just a refuge, but a creative and spiritual laboratory where they can explore the depths of their expanding consciousness. The wisdom of staying home also relates to what Brian Weiss calls conscious energy management. Spiritually awakened individuals gradually learn to treat their energy as the precious resource it is, rather than spending it carelessly on situations and people that don't reciprocate or appreciate their authentic selves. They begin to notice patterns in their energy levels and emotional states. They observe which activities leave them feeling energized and inspired versus those that leave them feeling drained and depleted. This awareness naturally leads to different choices about how to spend their time and with whom to share their energy. Many discover that they feel most aligned and peaceful when they're engaged in solitary spiritual practices like meditation, prayer, spiritual reading, or communion with nature. These activities don't just provide temporary relaxation, they actually recharge their spiritual batteries and help them maintain their connection to higher consciousness throughout their daily lives. Thank your higher plan by leaving a like as a sign of connection and gratitude for this message received today. Brian Weiss frequently discusses the concept of vibrational matching in relationships and social situations. According to this principle, we naturally attract and feel comfortable with people whose consciousness and energy vibrate at similar frequencies to our own. When someone undergoes significant spiritual awakening, their vibrational frequency often shifts dramatically, creating a temporary mismatch with their previous social circle. This doesn't mean they become superior to others or should judge those operating at different consciousness levels. Rather, it means they need to find new ways to connect with others that honor both their own spiritual evolution and the current state of consciousness of those around them. Many awakened individuals discover that they can be more genuinely helpful to others by maintaining their own high vibrational state rather than trying to meet others at lower consciousness levels. When they remain centered in their own peace and clarity, they become a stabilizing presence that can help elevate the consciousness of any interaction, even if only temporarily. This understanding helps explain why spiritually evolved people often prefer one-on-one interactions or small groups where they can maintain meaningful connection without being overwhelmed by chaotic group dynamics. They've learned that quality of connection matters far more than quantity of social contacts. Home provides the ideal space for these kinds of meaningful interactions. Whether it's hosting a small spiritual study group, having deep conversations with family members, or simply maintaining an open heart while doing everyday activities, the home environment allows for the kind of authentic relating that nourishes everyone involved. Dr. Weiss also emphasizes the importance of recognizing that staying home can be a form of service to the world. When spiritually awakened individuals take care of their own consciousness and maintain their connection to higher wisdom, they're contributing to the collective elevation of human consciousness. Their peace radiates outward. Their prayers and meditations add positive energy to the planetary field, and their commitment to personal growth creates space for others to evolve as well. This perspective transforms the apparent selfishness of preferring solitude into a recognition of authentic service. The hermit serves the community by maintaining the spiritual fire that others can approach when they're ready for deeper truth. The contemplative serves the world by holding space for divine wisdom to flow through into human consciousness. Many spiritually awakened people report receiving profound insights, creative inspiration, and healing energy specifically during their quiet times at home. These gifts often end up blessing not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone they touch. The book they write during solitary contemplation might help thousands of readers. The healing they experience in private might free them to be more present and loving with their family. The wisdom they gain through spiritual study might inform the way they handle challenges at work or in their community. Comment: I align myself with the purposes of good and continue firmly on my journey of elevation. This affirmation can anchor your spiritual commitment. The preference for staying home also reflects a shift in how spiritually awakened people understand success and fulfillment. Mainstream culture often equates social activity with happiness and isolation with depression. However, those who have touched spiritual truth usually discover that their deepest joy and sense of purpose come from inner connection rather than external validation. They might find more satisfaction in a morning meditation practice than in a night out at bars. They might feel more fulfilled spending an evening in spiritual study than attending a party filled with superficial conversation. This isn't because they're antisocial or depressed, but because they've discovered sources of fulfillment that don't depend on external stimulation or approval from others. Brian Weiss suggests that this shift in values is actually a return to more natural human priorities. Before the modern era's emphasis on constant entertainment and social media connectivity, people routinely spent much more time in contemplation, spiritual practice, and communion with nature. The awakened individual is in some sense remembering what genuine human fulfillment looks like. This doesn't mean they become completely solitary or reject all forms of community. Rather, they seek out communities based on shared spiritual values and mutual support for personal growth. They might find their tribe in a meditation group, a spiritual book club, an online community of like-minded souls, or even just one or two deep friendships with people who understand their journey. The key is that their social connections become intentional rather than habitual. They choose to spend time with people who inspire them to be their best selves, who support their spiritual growth, and who appreciate their authentic nature. This selective approach to relationships often results in fewer but much more meaningful connections. Many people going through this process worry that they'll end up lonely or isolated. However, most discover that the quality of connection they experience with carefully chosen spiritual companions far exceeds anything they experienced in larger, more conventional social circles. When you can be completely authentic and share your deepest truths without judgment or misunderstanding, even one such relationship can provide more genuine companionship than dozens of superficial friendships. Dr. Weiss often reminds his clients that Jesus, Buddha, and other great spiritual teachers all spent significant periods in solitude, withdrawing from the crowds to maintain their connection to divine wisdom. This pattern of retreat and return, contemplation and service, appears throughout spiritual traditions because it reflects a fundamental rhythm necessary for sustained spiritual growth. The awakened individual learns to honor this rhythm in their own life, recognizing when they need to withdraw for spiritual nourishment and when they're ready to re-engage with the world from a place of renewed clarity and purpose. Another crucial aspect that Dr. Weiss addresses is the relationship between spiritual awakening and what he calls dimensional sensitivity. Many of his patients report that after profound spiritual experiences, they become aware of subtle dimensions of reality that most people don't perceive. They might sense the presence of spiritual guides, deceased loved ones, or other non-physical beings. They might receive intuitive information about situations and people around them. This expanded awareness can make crowded public spaces feel overwhelming, not just because of human emotional energy, but because of the complex interplay of various dimensional influences present in any given location. Spiritually sensitive individuals often report that certain buildings, neighborhoods, or even cities feel energetically heavy or chaotic, while others feel peaceful and uplifting. Home becomes a space where they can control and consciously work with these subtle energies. They can cleanse and bless their living space, create altars or sacred areas for spiritual practice, and establish energetic boundaries that support their highest good. Many become skilled at working with crystals, sage, prayer, or other tools to maintain the vibrational quality of their environment. This isn't superstition or New Age fantasy, but practical spiritual hygiene for those whose consciousness has expanded beyond ordinary sensory perception. Just as someone with sensitive hearing might prefer quieter environments, those with dimensional sensitivity often prefer spaces where they can maintain awareness of higher spiritual influences without being bombarded by chaotic or lower vibrational energies. The home also becomes a place for developing and practicing newly awakened abilities. Many of Dr. Weiss's clients discover psychic gifts, healing abilities, or channels for spiritual communication that require quiet, private spaces to develop fully. These abilities often emerge gradually and need time and space to integrate safely into daily life. Attempting to develop psychic abilities or practice energy healing in chaotic public environments can be not only difficult, but potentially dangerous for someone who hasn't yet learned to manage their expanded sensitivity. The privacy and controlled environment of home provides the ideal laboratory for exploring these new capacities. Send this video to someone who is seeking spiritual clarification or comfort. Your sharing might be exactly what they need at this moment. Brian Weiss emphasizes that the spiritual path often involves learning to find the divine within ordinary life rather than seeking it only in exotic locations or special experiences. The awakened individual discovers that washing dishes can be a meditation, that tending a garden can be a prayer, and that simply sitting in peaceful awareness can be as profound as any religious ceremony. This understanding transforms the home from a mere physical shelter into a sacred space where every moment offers an opportunity for spiritual practice and growth. The kitchen becomes a place for mindful nourishment of the body. The bedroom becomes a sanctuary for rest and dream work, and even the bathroom becomes a space for cleansing and renewal on multiple levels. Many spiritually awakened people develop elaborate daily routines that support their consciousness throughout ordinary activities. They might begin each day with meditation or prayer, practice gratitude while preparing meals, or end each evening with reflection and intention setting for the next day. These practices don't require special equipment or exotic locations, just the willingness to bring spiritual awareness to everyday life. The beauty of this approach is that it makes spiritual development accessible and sustainable. Rather than depending on weekend retreats, expensive workshops, or exotic travel to maintain their spiritual connection, awakened individuals learn to find the sacred within their everyday routine. This makes their spiritual practice robust and reliable rather than dependent on external circumstances. However, this doesn't mean they never venture out or seek community. Instead, they become more intentional about when and how they engage with the wider world. They might attend spiritual retreats or workshops that genuinely support their growth, but they no longer feel compelled to attend every social event or maintain relationships that drain their energy. They learn to trust their inner guidance about when to engage and when to withdraw, rather than following social expectations or other people's opinions about what they should be doing. This inner-directed approach to life is one of the hallmarks of spiritual maturity. The wisdom of staying home also encompasses a deep understanding of what Dr. Weiss calls spiritual economics. This refers to the conscious management of one's spiritual energy as a valuable resource that should be invested wisely rather than spent carelessly. Spiritually awakened individuals learn to recognize the difference between activities that generate positive energy and those that consume it. They notice which people and situations leave them feeling inspired and uplifted versus those that leave them feeling drained and depleted. This awareness naturally leads to different choices about how to allocate their time and attention. Many discover that they can accomplish more meaningful work, offer more genuine service to others, and maintain better physical and emotional health when they honor their need for regular periods of solitude and spiritual nourishment. Rather than spreading themselves thin across numerous commitments and relationships, they focus their energy on fewer activities and connections that genuinely align with their authentic self and spiritual purpose. This selective approach might appear selfish to those who measure worth by busyness and social activity. However, awakened individuals understand that their greatest contribution to the world comes from maintaining their own spiritual clarity and acting from a place of genuine inspiration rather than guilt, obligation, or social pressure. Write in the comments, "I accept this spiritual guidance and move forward with courage and faith." Continue expanding your consciousness by exploring the recommended videos that will appear next. Dr. Weiss also addresses the common concern that preferring solitude might be a form of spiritual bypassing or avoiding necessary growth challenges. He distinguishes between withdrawal motivated by fear and withdrawal motivated by wisdom. Fear-based isolation typically involves avoiding all challenges and refusing to engage with difficult emotions or situations. Wisdom-based solitude, on the other hand, involves conscious choice about where and how to engage with life's challenges. Spiritually awakened individuals don't avoid all difficulties by staying home. Instead, they often find that their real growth challenges appear within the context of their chosen solitude. They might face deep-seated fears, unresolved trauma, or spiritual tests that require tremendous courage and commitment to work through. The difference is that they're choosing to face these challenges in an environment that supports their highest good, rather than in chaotic external situations that might overwhelm their capacity to respond with wisdom and love. Many report that their periods of chosen solitude actually prepare them to engage more effectively with the world when they do choose to venture out. The clarity, peace, and spiritual strength they develop through contemplative practices enables them to be more present, compassionate, and helpful when interacting with others. They learn to engage with others from a place of fullness rather than need, offering their gifts freely rather than seeking validation or approval. This shift from needy engagement to generous offering transforms the quality of all their relationships and interactions. As we near the end of our exploration into why spiritually awake people choose the sacred sanctuary of home, it's important to recognize that this isn't about becoming a hermit or rejecting the world entirely. Instead, it's about developing the spiritual discernment to choose consciously how to engage with life in ways that support your highest evolution and greatest service to others. Brian Weiss's decades of work with spiritually awakened individuals reveals that this preference for home and solitude is not only normal but necessary for continued spiritual growth. Those who honor this inner calling often discover that they're able to contribute more meaningfully to the world, precisely because they've taken the time to develop their own spiritual clarity and strength. The path of awakening requires courage to trust your inner guidance even when it goes against social expectations or other people's opinions about how you should live your life. It requires the wisdom to distinguish between isolation, born from fear, and solitude chosen from love. Most importantly, it requires faith that your spiritual development serves not just your own evolution, but the elevation of all consciousness. If you've been feeling called to spend more time in contemplation, spiritual practice, or simply quiet appreciation of life's simple pleasures, trust that calling.